We are seeing the room fill up right now, so we're just going to wait a couple seconds until all the participants have joined. We're excited that you all are taking some time this afternoon with us. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. To kick us off, as you know, I am Jamie Bograd, Director of Application Services, Student Affairs, and Recruitment. As always, I am joined by Jessica and Aaron, my amazing staff. And we also have Eric Gershio, AACOM's Director of Research, with us. You'll also be hearing from Mark Spicher, AACOM's SVP for Medical Education Research. He has a pre-recorded video. He was scheduled to be on this call with us today, but he was fortunate enough to take some much needed time off, and so he pre-recorded the video. On today's webinar, we'll be starting off with a presentation from Jessica about AACOMAS final decisions and how to report them. We'll answer any questions about that before moving on to Mark's pre-recorded presentation on why AACOM requires this data and what we do with it. You'll get a walkthrough of some of our reporting tools, the new interactive dashboards that your deans have access to, and hopefully they've given access to you as well, and some insight into our future plans for this data. Just a few quick housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted as usual. If you have any questions, use the question box to submit them. And we know some of those questions we might not be able to answer live, especially as they relate to Mark's presentation, but we'll do our best to connect you with the right person offline to get any questions you have answered at a later time. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Jessica.
All right, thanks, Jamie. So to start, here's a quick timeline that we have for reporting decisions for the 2019-2020 AACOMAS cycle. The two deadlines for comms are listed at the top. So previously we had said that the deadline to report deferrals was August 27th, but we've extended that deadline to September 4th because we know timelines are a little bit different at certain schools this year due to COVID. So what that means is that on September 4th, all comms should report those 2019 to 2020 students who will defer into the 2020-2021 cycle using the deferred decision code in WebAdmit, and I'll go into how to do that in a few minutes. Liaison will then copy those students' accounts into the next cycle, so the 2020 to 2021 cycle. So the student will exist in both cycles. So for the 2019-2020 cycle, that student will be reported as deferred, and then the next cycle, they'll be reported as matriculated or whatever their final status is at your institution. And then on October 2nd, that's the big deadline. That's when all final decisions are due. And then some other dates coming up for you guys that are related to decisions. For the current cycle, the decisions will be shared with the advisors through the Universal Advisor Portal on January 15th, 2021. And then throughout 2021, AACOM will provide reports on the 19 to 20 cycle as well. So what exactly are final decisions? We know that each COM has their own local admissions processes with their own steps and milestones. These local processes and steps are tied to larger global statuses that are uniform across AACOMAS. So there are 13 total global decision codes, and they include codes like application received, offer accepted, interviewed, etc. Those universal experiences that happen at all of the schools across AACOMAS. Of those 13 total global decision codes, there are 5 that are considered final. So these 5 final codes are listed on the screen. To complete reporting, all applicants who submitted an application to your school, regardless of whether they were complete or verified, must be mapped to one of these 5 codes. So these codes reflect a final or terminal state of an applicant's application at your institution. So we know that after a student submits an application, there are various paths that that applicant could take before they attend or don't attend your school. Some students will get an offer of admission, other students won't, and they'll never even fill out a secondary. Some students interview, other students don't. People are waitlisted. These are all steps in the application process, but regardless of the steps a particular applicant goes through, they'll all end up in one of these 5 categories. So the categories are matriculated, which is self-explanatory, deferred, offer declined, which means that an applicant was offered admission and they didn't accept your offer. And then denied and withdrew. So denied is you didn't offer them admission, and withdrew is the applicant didn't really even make it to the phase or the stage where you would offer them an offer. They didn't fill out a secondary. They just never responded. That's the withdrew status. So from these decisions, as you can see on the left-hand side, we also infer whether a student received an offer of acceptance from your COM. So if the student was reported as matriculated, deferred, or offer decline, that indicates to us that the student received an acceptance from your institution. And denied and withdrew indicates that the student did not receive an offer. So Mark's presentation in a little bit will touch on the value of that acceptance data and why it's important for those to match up and be accurate. So before we get into the how of reporting, just a couple FAQs that we get pretty frequently. We see many schools think that they've completed reporting, but there's still a lot of applicants in that none decision code. Typically, these students submitted an application, but were never verified. So we still actually need a decision or a status for these students. Incomplete and unverified applicants typically would fall into the withdrew decision code, because withdrew, as you can see on the previous slide from the definition, includes passive withdrawal through incomplete status. So that's the first big tip. Another FAQ that we see is that starting in May, schools have reported their students that are actually their matriculant cohort using the offer accepted decision code, and they don't remap that status from offer accepted to matriculated. So, you know, just to, when you complete reporting, double check that your matriculants are actually mapped to the matriculated global decision code in October. And then lastly, I think there's some general confusion over withdrew and offer decline. So if a student has been extended an offer and they didn't accept the offer, that should be offer declined. If a student received an offer of admission, that does not mean that they withdrew. Withdrew happens before the offer is made. So here's the how-to part of the presentation. Our goal is to make reporting as easy as possible. So there are actually 2 main ways to accomplish reporting for final decision. We're not going to get too into the weeds of the how in this presentation, but because we know many schools have nuanced questions and their own processes, and we recognize that it might take a little bit more hands-on training for particular schools to get into the how. So I put Karen Jacobs' contact information actually at the bottom of this slide. She's happy to answer more specific questions or troubleshoot with you about these processes. So the first way to enter decisions in WebAdmit is using the local status feature. So that gives you the ability to record an applicant's, so the local status feature gives you the ability to record an applicant's progress throughout your application cycle. So while local statuses are customizable by each program, they can be tied to a decision code that is uniform across AACOMAS. So you can create a local status that's unique to your institution and map it to the appropriate decision code, and then manage those students as they flow into and out of those statuses and groups at your school. So a couple things to note, multiple local statuses can be mapped to the same global decision code. You can update the global decision code that a local status is mapped to at any time. And you can make batch or large updates to local statuses of students using the list manager and the sorting features in WebAdmit as well. So that should make your process a little bit more efficient. And again, if you have any questions about how to do this at your institution, please contact Karen Jacobs or the WebAdmit support team. They're happy to help. And then the other method that many schools use to implement or to report final decisions is to use the Decisions API feature. So the Decisions API feature allows you to manage your decision codes for applicants via an integration between your like on-campus SIS or ERP system and WebAdmit. So I know many of you use Banner or those other specific on-campus systems. The API allows you to connect those two systems. So through this feature, you can move decisions recorded at your local on-campus system into WebAdmit. So if you manage your admissions process entirely using an external system, this might be a good route for you. The API will allow those two systems to talk, as I said, and then to implement this, you'll probably need the help of your IT team to set this up. So there is actually a website with all of the documentation your IT team will need in order to implement it. It's developer.webadmit.org. There is, again, if you have any questions about this though, please contact Karen Jacobs. She can liaise with you and your IT team and the technical folks at Liaison to help you support this process. So how do you know if you are actually done reporting or if you still have a little bit of work to do? You can check to make sure all your applicants are matched to a final decision code by ensuring that only the final 5 decision codes, which are actually highlighted on the screen, are populated in your WebAdmit designations by decision dashboard. So this dashboard is available on the right-hand side of the screen of the landing page when you log into WebAdmit. And all applicants that can be given a decision code should fall into one of those 5 highlighted statuses. And again, those statuses are matriculated, denied, deferred, offer, decline, and withdrew. So once you've completed reporting, there are some dynamic reports that populate in WebAdmit that might be useful to you. So AACOM provides additional reports and reporting tools outside of WebAdmit that we'll go into just a moment, but these pertain to what's readily available to you on demand inside WebAdmit. There are some comparative reports that enable you to compare your applicant pool to the entire AACOMAS pool. And you can also filter by decision code. So you can see your matriculants, GPA, MCAT, race, ethnicity, sex, gender data, and compare all of that, compare your matriculants to the rest of the applicant pool or the rest of the matriculant pool. There are actually a ton of these reports available to you, but I just on the screen highlighted a few that might be of interest: GPA, MCAT, race, ethnicity data, age, gender, sex, country of citizenship, or birth, states of residence, and majors are all things that might be helpful to you as you're analyzing your processes. And then, as you know, outside of WebAdmit, AACOM also provides annual reports, and that effort is led by Eric Gershio on the call. He's generously provided this timeline of those additional reports, and these reports are typically available to you directly, sent directly to the comms or posted on our website. And I won't read all of them, but in order to get all of these reports done, we need that data and that data to be submitted on time. So this is one of the many reasons why that data is important to us. And then, so that's the how of it. I want to pause before we go into Mark's presentation on the why and what we do with that data. And Jamie, did you want to add anything before we moved on?
No, and I'm just looking at the Q&A and chat. Remember, if you do have questions, feel free to post them in there and we can answer them.
I'm going to switch screens for a minute. Okay, I'm going to launch right into the next part of the presentation, which is pre-recorded by Mark. And it's all about what we do with the data and some of the new and exciting things that we have coming up with that data.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Spicher, Senior Vice President for Medical Education and Research at the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine. Jamie's asked me to join you this morning to talk a little bit about some of the things that we use your data for, the data that you provide us, especially the data that you provide us when you provide us final decisions on your applicants. So I'm going to take a brief look with you at some of the reports that we have done in the past, the things that we've recently started doing in 2020 that use that data, and then we're going to take a brief chat about the things that we're planning to do in the future with the data that you provide. Once again, I'd really like to thank you for joining us and let you know how important it is that your data is shared with us and that you trust us with that data and that you believe that you can make better decisions by working with us to use your data than otherwise. So I really do want to thank you for that and tell you how much we appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen. So I hope you don't mind my sense of humor here. We want your final decisions. We want to know the final answer that each of you give to your applicants. The reasons that we want to know are not just so that we can let you know what you did and compare that to what other comms did, but so that we can help you in the future to predict what your applicants might do, and we can help you identify perhaps points in your application processing that could be improved or that are keeping you from meeting your missions at your colleges of osteopathic medicine. Of course, the data that you provide contribute to your own understanding of your comm and your students, but it also contributes to a larger understanding because we share your information with your college, but we also share it in an aggregated way with other colleges of osteopathic medicine, with prospective applicants and students. We share it with policymakers and researchers. Our government relations department uses this data, and we have a whole team of academic researchers from colleges of osteopathic medicine and other institutions around the country that use this data to project the physician workforce, and especially the physician workforce in their area or underserved areas. Finally, we share your information with the public. The public, of course, has a sort of deep regard for medical schools and the training that you provide, and especially for future physicians. And the public knows that the future physicians are a resource that they absolutely need, and they want to know sort of what that future physician workforce might look like. And again, we'd like to work with you to help you predict your future. For example, if you're worried about the melt rate this year, the difference between the number of students that you accept and the number that actually show up for orientation, we're worried about that too. We know that those of you that are doing virtual interviews this year might have a lot more applications for interviews that you've had in the past, and we're hoping to provide you some additional information that can help you decide how many students you should be accepting so that you get the right number of students to show up at orientation for you. So I just want to take you sort of through the path of what we've done with your data in the past, which has mostly been make PDF or Excel reports that we post to our website, and do some custom queries that you've requested for your comm, sometimes just of your data and sometimes your data compared to data from other colleges of osteopathic medicine. And we've used it to answer your questions and the questions of researchers and policymakers. We've moved from doing sort of PDF-based or Excel-based website reports to interactive data dashboards that I'll show you a little bit about today. If you already have access to these dashboards, you're welcome to look at your own dashboards and see how we use this data after I give you a hint or show you a little bit of it by using some samples from the dashboards that I'll show you today. But if you don't have access to these dashboards, your dean knows about these dashboards and can give you access. If you would like to ask your dean for access to these dashboards, all they have to do is email us and we will give you permission to access them. If you don't have access to these dashboards and you'd like us to contact your dean, we can do that as well. Just email me or email Jamie and we will get that underway. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the future towards the end of this presentation. So once again, we've done a lot of reports on the website, and when Jamie provides this deck of slides to you, you'll be able to link out to all these reports. I'm just going to link out to one of them as an example. Another example is on the screen. You can see that it is an example of applicants to osteopathic medical schools by race and ethnicity, and that is by college. So you can see that we have a list of each college, the number of applicants, and the number of applicants by race and ethnicity. We're going to link out to a report here real quick. And this is a report that's on the website, so I'm going to have to share a different screen with you. So this is our annual AACOMAS applicant pool profile, and we'll be publishing another one of these this year, but this is from 2019. It's a long report that's prepared by our research department. You can see that it has all the definitions of what the fields mean. And then it takes us through how many applicants we got last year and how many applications they filed. And you can see that it goes through gender, age, race, ethnicity by gender, and allows you to really sort of do a deep dive into what our applicant pool looks like. So once again, these are the kinds of reports that we've been doing in the past. So going back to our deck of slides here. We've changed from doing those static reports to doing interactive dashboards. And the reason we're using interactive dashboards is because you're asking so many great questions about this data. You're asking us to slice and dice the data in a bunch of different ways. And I'd like to demonstrate for you a few of the dashboards real quickly. So if you had access to the dashboards on your campus, they would come in a folder that looks like this. There's an admissions folder that has your admissions dashboards in there, a COM information folder that has the results of the annual survey of your COM. And in that survey, we ask your COM about its curriculum, its faculty, the students, the graduates, the postgraduate placement. We ask it about the debt levels of your students, both when they arrive at school and when they leave school. And we ask it about some of this particular things that you feature as special programs at your school. We also do a survey of entering students every year. That survey is in the field right now for the 2020 entering class. And we do a survey of graduating students every year, and we've made dashboards for all of those. I'm going to show you some of the admissions dashboards right now. All right, so this dashboard shows you the demographic trends in your applicants. You can see that a common feature of all the dashboards is your ability to compare it to different years of your own data, but also you can compare it to all colleges of osteopathic medicine, and that's what we're looking at here. And you can see that this school compares, they have larger classes than the average of all colleges of osteopathic medicine, and they have significantly more students in each class, and so they're above the average, which are shown by these grayed out lines. If you wanted to choose a group of your peer colleges, you could choose a group of 4 to 6 schools, and we'll show you how that works right here. I'm going to choose some schools to belong to my peer group. You can see that when I choose these schools, nothing happens until I've chosen the 4th school. And once I'd chosen the 4th school, and all the schools have to have data, you can see that we have the new schools on here, and some of those schools don't have data yet for all these years. So you're going to have to choose schools that have data for the time period that you want to look at. But once you choose the schools, then you'll be able to compare to those 4 schools. And you can see now the average has changed because now I'm comparing to a set of peer schools rather than all the schools. And so you can do that for any of these dashboards, but you can see that we have your matriculants by sex and age, and we have them in a way that allows you to see the grouping by age over time. So here's 2015 to 2019. And as soon as you enter your 2020 data, we'll put that in these dashboards as well. We're going to look now at the GPA distribution of applicants. And so you can see that your matriculated applicants are dark green, your non-matriculated applicants are yellow. Once again, if we had your accepted applicants, if you entered final data of accepted but not matriculated for your applicants, we could turn those dots a color as well, and you'd be able to see how many of these sort of high GPA, high MCAT students you were missing out on, and that might let you decide what to do about that. You can also see that total GPA for this demonstration school has gone down, but is starting to come back up. And so that might be something that you want to know about for your school as well. And as I said, you have access to these dashboards through your dean. So once again, it's all comms or a peer group of comms. You can compare yourself to a previous year, right? Let's say I want to compare myself to myself in 2016. There we go. So not much difference for 2016, but I can move that average around and it'll change, as you can see. Also, we have a number of dashboards that will let you know about where your students come from. So let's take a quick look at those. So for this demonstration school, we have this by feeder schools, and we can look at yield. So which feeder schools give us the highest yield of applicants to matriculants? Which feeder schools give us the students with the highest MCATs? Right? Which feeder schools give us the students with the highest GPA? And you can see that for this particular demonstration school, those don't change that much, but we can also see where our admitted students come from as well. We can see how that's changed for our school through different application cycles. And we can see, once again, we can look at students who applied, students who were admitted, students who matriculated, right? And so this is the data, the admitted data is the data that we often don't have great data for. And so we'd really like to improve the kind of data that we give you by getting better decision codes from you. So that's just a sample of the dashboards that we've been developing. And as I said, those have all been rolled out. We've prepared a couple new dashboards to roll out in September. One of the dashboards might be of interest to you, and that is we have a dashboard of practicing physicians from your school. So if you're looking for places for students to shadow or where your alumni have located, this might be a very helpful dashboard to you as well. Once again, we have these sets of dashboards that have already been rolled out to you. These 4 dashboards, the first 4 admissions, matriculating students, comm information, and graduating students. And in September, we'll be rolling out these alumni dashboards for all of your schools. But what we really like to do with your data is predict things for you. We can help you decide which students to interview or which students to accept by looking at students that have done well at your comm in the past, which students have actually shown up even when you accepted them. Let's say that, let's talk about the alternate list bullet here. Let's say that you have an alternate list of 40 or 50 students, and you know that there's going to be about 10 students that don't show up for orientation. Which students should you call from the alternate list? Perhaps just the order in which they're listed, which might be some sort of priority order that your dean or that your admissions committee gave those students. But I would say, frankly, you should call students that are more likely to show up for orientation, especially since you'll be giving them such a short notice. So if you tell us which students are accepted but don't show up, and which students are accepted and do show up through the decision codes, we can really get pretty good at predicting that with you. How many students to interview, how many students to accept, once again, that's based on data from past years. And so the better data that we have for you over the years, the better we can do helping you make those decisions. Finally, which students are likely to be successful in your comms? We're working on data use agreements with the National Board of Osteopathic Medical Examiners so that we can get COMLEX scores for your students. And we can show you, these students are likely to match to a residency because we've started collecting residency match information from our comms. These students are likely to do well on COMLEX. So over the years, you'll have better and better information predicted about your applicants that will help you make better decisions. So again, I thank you for the work that you do with us to help us get the data that we use for all of these purposes, these reporting and dashboarding purposes, and soon these predicting purposes. But I really want to work with you all in your comms to help you make better recruitment, application, and selection decisions. And I know that that's going to be more work for you. So hopefully you'll find what we do of value, and you'll be able to convince your colleagues and your deans that we should get the best data possible so that we can help you with better decisions. I'm sorry I can't be with you live to answer your questions, but I'm happy to answer them by email, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks very much, and thanks for watching me today. Take care and stay safe.
Well, we tried to answer the couple questions that came across during the call. I also, I believe it was Sonia who asked the question of whether or not we'd be sharing the compliance data similarly to the way we did last year, which helps us and you keep track of whether or not your school is compliant by our deadlines. And we already have that available. I think I'm sharing that with you right now. So it'll, of course, we haven't even asked you to put them in yet, so nobody is yet compliant, but once you become compliant, you'll see the date you became compliant and whether, and then what date, if you weren't compliant, what date you became compliant. We'll also, just like last year, share this with the Board of Deans so that they know that we're on track to get all our schools closed and that Eric and his team can ensure that our reporting gets done on time. I know this is the first time you're probably hearing from us about this report. Usually we just send it in a PDF. So we hope that this was a little bit more informative by seeing how you do things rather than just sending along the documentation. But we want to remind you that we're here, Jessica's here, I'm here, and all of the team at Liaison is here to help you get this done. And again, if it's more efficient, or if you don't use Liaison or WebAdmin as your primary tool, if you use another software vendor, there are ways for them to mass export and import into Liaison's database to make it easier. So you should work with your software vendors and or Liaison to get that accomplished. We know that we have about 24 more minutes before we are scheduled to end. So if you have questions about this or anything else, please feel free to add them to the Q&A and we will answer them. We'll stay on for about 5 more minutes and wait to answer those questions unless their questions are coming at us full speed ahead. A couple of people just want to know if the recording will be available, and yes, we'll absolutely make this recording available. It usually takes about 3 to 4 business days to make the recording available live. Dr. Spicher's is already available. We'll go ahead and send that one out, and the documentation that Jessica provided through hers will be available in the next 3 to 4 days. We do already have the PDFs available to show you how to do this, but I think the way she described it makes it a little bit more easy too, so we'll make sure we do this. Someone else asks us, if all of their decision codes have been finalized, do we need to tell us this, or we gather the information automatically? That's a great question. So we are able to log in and see that all the decisions have been complete. So we do a periodic check of this, usually starting next week for the next several weeks, and we'll mark it that you're compliant once that's done. So those of you that have already done that, we really, really appreciate that. And that's probably the earliest we've ever seen that. Well, while you're, quietly, patiently waiting for more questions, I do just want to remind everybody that through AACommunities this morning, I sent out several newsletters from the AACOM related to the MCAT exam. And there's some really interesting data that they describe for medical schools. So I encourage you guys to check those newsletters out. Some interesting information about how students from low socioeconomic backgrounds and traditionally underrepresented minority students are taking the MCAT exam and how they are faring on the MCAT exam. So that was really interesting, as well as the influx of examinees registered to take the exam this year. So despite us early on thinking that people weren't able to take the exam, it seems like the rate at which examinees are scheduled is significantly higher than any previous year. So that's really interesting as well. So if you do have time, please go check out those articles, and we'll be trying to send you those newsletters actually on a weekly basis from the AACOM now that we have access to them. All right, well, I don't want to keep you on longer than you want to be with us. So if you don't have any further questions, again, we will send you the recording within the next couple of days. And as always, please feel free to reach out to any of us or your Cameo leadership, Paula or Molly or Ellie. We meet with them on a pretty regular basis, and just trying to learn and make sure we're doing what you need us to do. So have a great day if you're ready to hang up.